when peace becomes the priority. Have you ever walked away from a conversation or a visit with someone, feeling completely drained emotionally, mentally, and even physically, and you couldn't quite explain why? There were no arguments, no raised voices, nothing obviously toxic on the surface, yet something inside you felt unsettled, like your soul had been quietly bruised. This kind of discomfort is often overlooked or dismissed, especially by those of us who were raised to keep the peace, avoid drama, and be the bigger person. But when you've passed the age of 70, when you've carried the weight of decades and experienced life's many chapters, some joyful, some heartbreaking, all deeply human, you begin to realize something important. Peace of mind isn't just a luxury. It's a necessity. At this stage in life, peace becomes a form of survival. You've spent years giving, accommodating, understanding, and forgiving, sometimes too much, sometimes too often. And now, your emotional well-being is not something to negotiate. You've earned the right to create distance from anything or anyone that brings more stress than serenity. Because here's the unspoken truth many elders struggle to acknowledge. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table, even if they've been sitting there for years. Some people subtly and consistently erode your joy. They don't shout or throw tantrums. They don't create scenes. Instead, they chip away at your light with quiet criticism, guilt-laced comments, emotional demands, or a constant cloud of negativity that follows them like a shadow. And often, out of habit or guilt or sheer politeness, we let them stay in our lives. We allow the discomfort to settle in as if it's part of the furniture, unpleasant, but permanent. But it doesn't have to be that way. This guide is about reclaiming your emotional home. It's about protecting the time, energy, and joy that remain, and doing so with grace, not vengeance. We're going to explore 4 kinds of people you should consider gently, calmly, and quietly letting go of after 70. There's no need for explosive breakups. No need for dramatic declarations. Just thoughtful, intentional distance. Because boundaries are not about punishment, they're about preservation. And I encourage you to stay with me until the very end. Because the final type of person we'll discuss is often the most difficult to recognize. The one that lingers in your life out of routine, but quietly pulls you downward. Recognizing them and releasing them could be the most liberating act of your later years. Number 1. The chronic critic. When every word feels like a razor blade. There's a particular kind of pain that doesn't come from someone yelling at you. It comes from someone constantly pointing out what's wrong with you. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in a subtle drip, drip, drip of disapproval that wears you down like water eroding stone. This is the chronic critic, the person who always finds a flaw, even in your best efforts. They're never fully satisfied, never fully kind, and never, ever quiet when there's an opportunity to correct you. You've likely known someone like this. Perhaps it's a sibling who always has a better way you should have done something. A friend who offers unsolicited truths cloaked as concern. A spouse who notices your mistakes more than your intentions. Or even an adult child whose tone carries the weight of subtle disappointment, no matter how hard you try. Maybe you share a proud moment, something that took courage or effort, and their response, not a celebration, but a correction. You tell them you tried a new exercise class, and they point out how dangerous it could be at your age. You dress up for a gathering, and they mention that the color isn't flattering. You offer a suggestion in conversation, and they respond with a slight smirk, as if your thoughts are amusing but not valuable. It's not direct abuse. It's not screaming, but it leaves a mark just the same. Over time, you begin to internalize their tone. You hesitate before you speak. You second-guess your choices. You feel your world getting smaller, not because you want it that way, but because you're tired of being picked apart. That's what chronic criticism does. It doesn't destroy all at once. It gradually convinces you that your voice, your ideas, and your very presence are a little too much or not enough. And here's what most people don't realize until it's too late. Chronic critics aren't trying to help you. They're trying to control you. Their nitpicking is rarely about love, it's about power. By keeping you on the defensive, they ensure they remain in a position of authority. Your uncertainty fuels their confidence. Your shrinking makes them feel taller. Now, you might be thinking, but they're family. Or they've always been that way. And maybe that's true. But ask yourself this. Does their presence lift you up or wear you down? Do you feel more like yourself or less when they're around? You've been through too many storms, endured too many losses, and faced too many challenges to spend your golden years explaining your worth to someone who refuses to see it. And here's the hardest truth. Chronic critics rarely change. Not because they can't, but because they don't want to. Their comfort comes from keeping others uncomfortable. Their balance depends on tipping the scale in their favor. And no amount of patience, reasoning, or gentle confrontation will make them see you differently if they're committed to seeing you as small. But what you can change is how much access they have to you. Cutting off a chronic critic doesn't mean slamming the door in anger. It doesn't mean writing a long, emotional letter or initiating a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes, the most powerful form of boundary is quiet distance. You simply stop giving them front row seats to your life. You stop volunteering information that they'll dissect. You stop inviting their commentary into your sacred spaces. Begin by limiting how often you reach out. Let texts and calls go unanswered for a while. Decline invitations that drain your spirit. When you do have to engage, keep it polite but brief. Speak with clarity, but don't overshare. Don't give them more material to criticize. And don't give them the satisfaction of watching you shrink. And most importantly, fill the space they once occupied with voices that uplift. People who celebrate your wins, however small. Friends who listen without judgment. Companions who don't need to correct your every word to feel intelligent. You're not here to be someone else's project or target. You're not here to justify your joy. You are here to live with confidence, dignity, and emotional freedom. And the first step toward that life, it is letting go of the ones who never learned how to see your worth without trying to lower it. The emotional manipulator. When love feels like a transaction, there's a unique kind of exhaustion that comes not from what people say, but from what they imply, from the invisible weight they place on your shoulders with sighs, silences, and guilt-laced statements. The emotional manipulator is a master of this kind of unspoken pressure. They rarely ask directly for your time, energy, or attention, but somehow, you always end up giving it. And if you don't, you feel like you've committed some kind of betrayal. At this stage in your life, you should not be navigating emotional landmines. You should not be decoding people's silence or spending nights wondering, did I do something wrong? Yet, manipulators have a way of keeping you in that fog of confusion. They want you questioning yourself, because when you do, you're easier to control. Let's paint the picture more clearly. Maybe you have a friend who only calls when they need something, but when you're the one who needs support, they're nowhere to be found. And if you bring it up, suddenly, you're the one being too sensitive. They flip the script so smoothly that you begin to doubt your own experience. Or perhaps it's a family member, one who constantly uses guilt as a tool. They say things like, I guess you're too busy for me now. Or, must be nice to have time for everyone else. It's not what they're saying. It's what they want you to feel. They want you to feel indebted. Like your love must constantly be proven through sacrifice. Sometimes it's even more subtle. You offer a boundary. Maybe you say you're too tired to attend an event, or you politely decline a request, and suddenly the mood shifts. They grow cold, distant. They don't argue, and they don't explode. But you can feel the punishment in the silence. It's the kind of chill that wraps itself around your heart and makes you second-guess everything. That's the signature of an emotional manipulator. They make you responsible for their feelings. And over time, that kind of emotional burden becomes heavier than any physical task. Because now, every decision you make has to pass through the filter of, will this upset them? You find yourself bending, stretching, and compromising not because you want to, but because you're trying to avoid the storm that follows a no. But here's what needs to be said, lovingly and clearly. You are not responsible for managing another adult's emotional landscape. You are not a mood regulator. You are not a peace offering. You are not a sponge meant to absorb someone else's dissatisfaction with life. Especially not now. Not after everything you've survived. Not after all the years you've spent caretaking, giving, forgiving, and showing up when no one else would. If you have to constantly prove your love through discomfort, it isn't love. It's emotional labor. And at this point in your journey, You are allowed to retire from that role. Some manipulators will use your compassion against you. They know you're thoughtful. They know you care. And they use that knowledge to press buttons that keep you emotionally entangled. But true love does not require guilt. True connection does not demand emotional servitude. Now, stepping back from an emotional manipulator doesn't require confrontation. In fact, confrontation often fuels their tactics. They'll twist your words, shift blame, and somehow make you the villain in your own story. That's why the most effective strategy is disengagement with kindness. Reduce your emotional availability. Limit the depth of your conversations. Stop explaining your choices. Let your no be gentle, but firm. You don't have to argue. You don't have to justify. You simply don't participate in the dance anymore. And slowly, you'll feel the fog lifting. You'll notice your chest feels lighter when you're not bracing for guilt. You'll realize that quiet can be peaceful when it isn't laced with tension. You'll begin to reclaim a version of yourself that existed before someone else's emotions dictated your life. One day, you might sit by your window with a cup of tea and recognize that the calm you feel isn't just from the weather, it's from the absence of emotional noise. The kind of peace that comes when you stop allowing people to rent space in your heart without paying respect. Letting go of emotional manipulators isn't cruel. It's an act of deep self-love. It's choosing clarity over confusion. It's choosing rest over guilt. And most importantly, it's choosing to honor the time you have left by filling it with relationships that are mutual, joyful, and emotionally honest. You've earned that. Not through perfection, but through endurance, through grace, through all the times you put others first. Now it's your turn. The subtle energy thief, the quiet drain you never noticed. Not every harmful presence in your life comes with warning signs. Some don't yell, don't criticize, and don't manipulate in obvious ways. In fact, they may appear pleasant, harmless, even kind. But after spending time with them, you feel tired not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. That tiredness is your signal. That person is what we call an energy thief. Now, energy thieves are tricky because they often hide in plain sight. They're not overtly cruel. They don't start arguments. They don't demand your loyalty or burden you with guilt. But they consume you slowly, in conversations that go nowhere, in constant complaints, in subtle pessimism that wraps itself around your hope like a wet blanket, and you walk away feeling like someone took something from you. Even though you can't quite explain what it was, you may know someone like this. Maybe they visit often or call. You answer out of habit or politeness, not joy. The conversation always follows the same pattern. It starts with small talk, but then it turns into a long monologue about their aches, their neighbor's drama, the state of the world, or something else that leaves you feeling weighed down. And you listen, because that's who you are. You've always been the listener. But after they leave, or hang up, you feel drained. You find yourself staring out the window, not because you're at peace, but because your mind is overloaded with their noise. They didn't ask for advice. They didn't want a solution. They just wanted a place to offload their darkness. And that place was you. Over time, relationships like this become less about connection and more about endurance. You find yourself preparing emotionally before seeing them, bracing for the stories, the negativity, the subtle pull of their need to dump rather than share. And when you're older, energy becomes one of your most sacred resources. You don't have endless reserves of it to spend on relationships that only take and never give. That it's important to understand that energy thieves aren't always malicious. Often, they're simply stuck in their own loops. They don't even realize what they're doing. But the impact on you is the same: depletion, fatigue, emotional fog. And as you move forward in life, you deserve to surround yourself with people who bring lightness, not weight. Imagine what it would feel like to have a day without that silent burden. To not be the emotional sponge for someone else's unhappiness. To sip your morning coffee in peace instead of worrying about how to politely cut short a draining visit. That kind of peace is not only possible, it's your right. So, how do you create space from an energy thief? Especially if there's someone close, like a sibling, old friend, or neighbor. The answer isn't cruelty, it's boundaries. Start small. Shorten the phone calls. Take longer to return messages. When they begin their usual cycle of complaints, redirect the conversation or politely say, I'm stepping away from heavy conversations. Lately, I'm focusing on staying light and calm. Question number 1. Why do older adults often feel invisible, even to people who love them? Answer. Because the world has a terrible habit of assigning value based on speed, productivity, and youth. As people age, they're often seen as past their peak, as if the only parts of them that mattered were tied to what they did rather than who they are. This leads to a quiet erasure, even from family. Adult children get busy. Society becomes impatient. Conversations get shorter. People start making decisions for you instead of with you. That invisibility isn't just about being ignored. It's about being slowly dismissed. But your worth has never been measured by your utility. You are still here, and your story still matters. Visibility begins with reclaiming your presence, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. Question number 2. What are emotional boundaries, and why are they so important after 70? Answer. Emotional boundaries are the invisible lines that protect your inner peace, self-respect, and dignity. They help you define what is acceptable and how others treat you, especially as you get older and may be more vulnerable to guilt, pressure, or over-accommodation. After 70, these boundaries become essential because people may assume you have nothing better to do. Or worse, they might infantilize you. Emotional boundaries allow you to say, I've lived long enough to know what doesn't serve me anymore. They keep your soul from being drained by people who take more than they give. And most of all, they affirm that you matter too. Question number 3. What does it really mean to start over later in life? Answer. Starting over doesn't always mean moving to a new place or reinventing your entire life. Sometimes it's something much deeper. It means choosing to no longer carry the guilt, shame, or outdated roles you've been saddled with. It means giving yourself permission to become softer, wilder, freer, or whatever your spirit longs for. You start over when you stop apologizing for your needs. When you no longer tolerate being treated as less than. Starting over at 70, 80, or even 90 is not naive, it's wise. It's you saying, I'm still here, and I still get to choose. Question number 4. How do you deal with friends or family who drain your energy or disrespect your time? Answer. You begin by accepting the truth you've been trying to avoid. That love does not excuse disrespect. Then you gently but clearly name the behavior that hurts you. You create space, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. That might mean shorter visits, fewer phone calls, or saying no without guilt. Remember, your energy is precious now. You've spent decades caring for others. You've earned the right to protect your peace. Some people won't understand, but your well-being isn't up for debate. Boundaries are how you love yourself without needing anyone else's permission. Question number 5. What if I feel like I've outgrown my role in the family or community? Answer. Then it's time to gently step into a new one. Aging is not just about physical change. It's about identity transformation. Maybe you've always been the caretaker, the problem solver, the peacemaker. And maybe now you're tired. That's not weakness, it's evolution. You are allowed to retire roles that no longer reflect who you are. Your family might resist, but your soul will thank you. This is the age where you stop performing and start being. Let someone else take the lead. Let yourself receive instead of always giving. The world doesn't end when you shift. Often it opens. Question number 6. How do I let go of things, physical or emotional, that no longer serve me? Answer. With grace, patience, and self-compassion. Emotional decluttering is an act of sacred courage. Start small. Ask yourself, does this object, memory, routine, or relationship bring me peace or pain? If it brings pain or obligation with no meaning, thank it for what it once gave you and release it. That includes toxic people, outdated traditions, and harsh self-talk. Letting go doesn't mean erasing your past. It means refusing to be trapped by it. And the more you release, the more light can enter. Your soul deserves spaciousness in these years, not clutter. You are not what you keep. You are what you free yourself to become. Question number 7. How do I protect my joy in a world that seems louder, crueler, and more chaotic? Answer. You protect your joy like a sacred ember in a storm. You build a quiet place inside yourself where no news cycle, no rude comment, and no dismissive child can enter. Joy at this age doesn't come from noise. It comes from noticing, from a warm cup of tea, a slow walk, a familiar voice. You protect it by staying grounded in now, not regretting the past or fearing the future. You do it by unplugging from people or media that constantly stress you, and you fiercely guard your right to feel good, even when others don't understand why that matters. Because joy is not a luxury, it's fuel for your spirit. Question number 8. What if I still crave love, intimacy, or companionship, but feel ashamed to admit it? Answer. There is nothing shameful about wanting connection, affection, or even passion at any age. The world may try to shame older adults into quiet loneliness, as if needing love is childish or embarrassing. But your heart didn't stop beating at 60. Your longing is human, and whether it's a deep friendship, romantic partner, or a gentle hand to hold, you deserve that closeness. Speak your truth. You don't need to justify your heart's desires to anyone. Wanting love doesn't make you weak. It means you're still alive and still brave enough to hope. Question number 9. Is it too late to become who I always wanted to be? Answer. Never. Not by a long shot. In fact, this might be the first time you're free enough to try. The roles are lighter now. The pressure is lower. And the clock ticking? That's not a deadline. It's a reminder to live fully. You don't need a title or a stage. You just need to give yourself permission. If you want to paint, sing, study, write, or explore, do it. Start small. Start messy. But start. Becoming isn't about age. It's about willingness. The world lied to you when it said the best was behind you. The truth, your truest self, might just be around the corner. Question number 10. What's one step I can take today to reclaim my peace and purpose? Answer. Write down what you're done tolerating and burn it, literally or symbolically. Then write down what you want to feel more of: peace, laughter, connection, clarity, and take one action that moves you toward it. That could be saying no to a draining task, or yes to a lunch invite. It could be cleaning out a drawer, or finally booking that appointment. It could be sitting in silence for 5 minutes and breathing like you matter. Small acts of rebellion against invisibility are powerful. Your life is not on hold. It's waiting for you to show up. Take one small, meaningful step today to reclaim your sense of self. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding, a boundary you've been afraid to set. Maybe it's time to politely but firmly say, "No, thank you. That no longer works for me." Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe today you rest without guilt. Maybe today you wear what makes you feel alive. Maybe you go outside and let the sun hit your face and whisper, "I'm still here. I'm still me." Write down one thing you've been holding on to that you're ready to release, and let it go. Burn it, tear it, bury it. Then write down one thing you still want to do, feel, or become, and take the first step toward it. You are not waiting anymore. You are not shrinking anymore. You are not tolerating things that shrink your spirit. You are here, fully, richly, fiercely. And your age is not an apology. It is your power. Let the world adjust to your light, not the other way around.